Today on the Gilbert.K Show, we're diving deep into the mind of a 2 times Emmy-winning editor behind the marvelous Mrs. Maisel, All the Beauty and the Bloodshed, and 2025's biggest films. He's the storytelling architect shaping some of the most powerful cuts in film and TV today, a true master of the edit suite. Let's give a big welcome to the one and only Brian A. Cates.
Hey, Brian. Pleasure to have you on the show. How are you today?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining.
Appreciate it.
Before we kick it off, would you explain to our audience what does an editor do?
Oh boy, that's the big question. Well, you know, we are a department head, like the cinematographer and the production designer and the costume designer and the composer, and really we build, like, we're the head of post production, and we are in charge of building the movie or the TV show, meaning every shot that goes in the order we decided it goes in, and for the length that it should go in, and also the sound, either a rough or a more fine version of the soundtrack, including sometimes the real music, sometimes temp music, temporary sound effects, or sometimes very elaborate sound design, depending on what the project needs. But no, really, we create the map, like there's a script, and that's words, and once it becomes images and sound, it's the editor's job to build it, where we build a movie.
Excellent. Okay, so let's kick it off. So our first segment is finding the frame. You grew up in New York, surrounded by art, energy, and storytelling everywhere. How did that environment influence your sense of rhythm and storytelling as an editor?
Oh my God. Well, I grew up in New Jersey, so the rhythm of New Jersey influenced my.
Okay, yeah.
No, New York. Also, no, I grew up in Teaneck, New Jersey, which is very, very close to New York City. So I always felt the pull of New York City. I went to NYU and I studied film. I tried to double major in cinema studies. I think I was short a few credits, but my intention was to follow both theory and production equally, because I love film criticism and I love film theory. I think the rhythm of, the movie that I did last year, It's Never Over, Jeff Buckley, which I co-edited with Stacey Goldate.
Yeah.
A movie that takes place Jeff Buckley lived in the East Village, which is where I lived, for when I was in college, and also several years after college, and it was the same time period. It was the 90s. So it's funny. I mean, the answer to that question is very much in that film. There was an experimental art scene. Was and is an experimental art scene in the East Village that felt very, very subversive, if I can use that word. It was really queer. It was about it was political. It was protesting the government homophobic repression during the AIDS crisis, and also anti-feminist, and there was a big anti-war movement against the Iraq war, and all of that was going on when I was in college. So that felt kind of the opposite of like Vitamins. It felt really joyful. It felt relevant. I felt like the protest world that I was kind of occasionally in, but adjacent to and influenced by, had a lot of music, and, like, I'm talking about, like, ACT UP and the early AIDS, or the AIDS movement, and all that was sort of in the art scene, and in the party scene, in the club scene, and there was a sense of urgency, and we're talking about sort of the post-punk, like, downtown New York world, which was really from the 80s, but I was there in the 90s. And it's in that movie. That was the world that Jeff Buckley was exposed to. And that's where he became he was both, first he was a an actor in experimental theater with his girlfriend Rebecca at the time, and then he became a musician. So it's funny, like when I cut that sequence in that film, I was drawing from my own experience of being a college student in the East Village, and just being exposed to like wild stuff like Penny Arcade and like the Ridiculous Theater Company, and you just like like this wonderful experimental world. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. So as a child, were you enrolled in like art classes? Were your family in the art industry, or like
Oh my
how
God,
did you?
it's such a good question. Nobody ever asks editors that. uh, um, Actually, yeah. I mean, my in a sense, my grandfather was a music publisher.
Oh wow.
His name was Freddie Bean. My uncle's name was Freddie Beanstalk. My grandfather's name was Johnny Beanstalk. They were both music publishers and partners. My uncle Freddie Beanstalk was a quite renowned music publisher. So I didn't grow up necessarily around the art making, but around the business, in a sense, around the business of art making, and knowing that that I had relatives who took art very seriously. I know that some people grow up in families where art, you say you want to be in the arts, and it probably feels like pie in the sky. And I count myself as very lucky that when I told my parents I wanted to go to film school, I think because my grandfather and uncle were in the music industry, it helped that that statement feel like it wasn't naive or ridiculous. It felt like, our family has is in the arts, and it wasn't super unusual. So yeah, I feel very lucky that I had that kind of entitlement, I guess it is.
So did you have like a camera when you were a kid?
Oh yeah.
Shooting around. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I feel like with the summer camp that I went to, which was an arts camp, which was mostly theater and orchestra and stuff like that. Also had a video department, and my counselor, whose name is Cecily Myhawk, she was an NYU student, and she really influenced my like thinking about like how you can. I mean, this is the age of like high 8 video, pretty much, which was like one of the first sort of handy cam video cameras, and she taught me how to edit in a sense. Like she taught me that you can do a match cut. You could shoot two things in at different times, and you can match action and put them together by recording one VHS tape to another, and you could both edit in camera by controlling when you pause the camera and start the camera again, and you could also edit, and you could create post-production by if you have two video VCRs. So yeah, I was doing that as a teenager, and so in a sense, the idea that NYU was the place to go was pretty obvious, because the person teaching me how to do that stuff was an NYU student in the film school, and she was awesome, and I loved the idea that you could edit just with very few tools, basically with home video stuff that a lot of people had.
That's amazing. So do you remember the first time you realized editing could be a form of storytelling, and that moment when the pieces of film or footage could make someone feel something?
I mean, I started to really believe in editing as the part of the art form that spoke to me there, at summer camp, and then more in film school. I think NYU at that time, and maybe still, is kind of trains you to be a writer director, because that's the most that's where the auteur idea of directing comes from. But that doesn't mean that you can't focus on the other crafts or art forms, art/crafts. So I like NYU didn't have an editing program, but it did have a I could cut other people's student films, and I did. because I felt there was something about being in the room alone, or in the quiet of the room with the director, and no giant crew and no weather and no um no, really, it sounds so dumb, but like I never felt like I wanted to be like there out on the like in the
Yeah,
like I'm like trivializing war, but like in the war zone of a movie set. And like a lot of students did, a lot of young
yeah,
filmmakers really were excited about, like, being out there in the cold, and
yeah,
getting the shot, and like losing the light, and like improvising on the day and all this stuff. And I just found that so not just stressful, but like unpleasant.
yeah,
And also I couldn't see how that really reflected the idea
yeah,
of building a movie. And in the editing room, you're literally putting it together. It's like,
yeah,
it's like typing or
yeah,
painting, or playing music, even more
yeah.
so.
Yeah. It's
You're-
amazing that you were able to realize this is what you wanted when you were like younger, and then you perfected. You started working on that. It's because it takes years to figure out what you want and stuff, and it's amazing that you were able to do that at the early age. Uh, that's amazing. So I hear people say, "Oh, you like filmmakers, not people." I hear filmmakers say you create a film when you write the script first, and then when you shoot it, and then when you edit it. What do you think about the statement?
yeah, I wonder. Yeah, the statement. Yeah, that the last draft is the editing. I don't know who said that, but it's sort of like it's like
Yeah.
an so I don't know if anyone ever originally said it, or we've all. No, yeah, of course, it's super true. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a script is a script is a blueprint, a
Yeah.
very important blueprint. But the thing about a script also is that it's a calling, it's a way for the people who finance the movie to understand what they're paying for. So the
Yeah.
things in the script aren't necessarily the most. I hate to say this, because there are screenplays that are works of art by themselves, that are not doing any of this kind of business. But a lot
Yeah.
of times the screenplay will incorporate, notes, or ideas that come from the, like, film is is a collaborative process, and
Yeah.
financing a film requires buy-in from people who are paying for it. So a lot of times scripts can have redundancies. They could over explain. The
Yeah.
dialogue can do too much work in setting, in doing exposition. And a lot of times, or I don't want to say the majority of times, but sometimes, um directors who are writer directors will put things in to satisfy a note from a studio, and it doesn't necessarily mean that's the most efficient way to tell the story. That, like, film is a visual language, visual and
Mhm.
sonic language
Yeah.
medium. And, like, you know ideally you want to tell the story that way. I mean, there are movies where dialogue is sort of key. Like, there are whole genres, romantic comedies, and like, films from the golden age of Hollywood, where dialogue is super important. But as a general rule, like, you want to be mostly telling the story through images and through sounds. And
Yeah.
I mean, dialogue, when it's best, I think, reflects character. And you're always trying to hide exposition. You're trying to tell the story. You're trying, like, people say things because the subtext is telling you something emotionally about the relationship, or
Mhm.
about where they are in their emotional their emotional state. um and it shouldn't ever sound like it's explaining the plot, or what has to happen. I mean,
Yeah.
some genres can do that a little bit more, and some genres do it less. But as a general rule, like, part of my job as an editor is to make things that the audience need to know about plot sound like they're not exposition, because they go by quickly, or they're hidden, they're camouflaged by action, or by
Yeah.
incident. And that's part of screenwriting too. Great screenwriters will build that into the script.
Yeah.
um, a screenplay is a lot of things, but it's not the final draft.
Yeah.
It's something that you have to sort of throw out. um, at a certain point to really look at the footage on its own merits and figure out what the shot is telling you, you know?
Excellent. Before the big awards and prestige projects, what were some of the early creative struggles or turning points that shaped the kind of editor you've become?
I feel like, I mean, it's always about, I mean, for me, it was always about trying to work on things that felt like meaningful to me, but that also people wanted to watch. I mean, I feel like that's sort of, I mean, it might be a very common, you know, struggle is just to feel like, you know, the way that editors get jobs is we get scripts. You know, it's a lot like actors. We get scripts and we interview, and we talk about the themes. We talk about the movie with the director, and we try to really figure out what is our what insights do we have, and how would we what like how do we read it in a way that makes the director feel excited by what we have to bring to it. And you know, in my career, like I felt like I got lucky because some of the projects that came to me early on were just they felt like like my life, like there was a mirror to aspects of my life. I'm not saying things have to be biographical. They don't, but you know, like the movie Trick, which is a gay romantic comedy that I made, that I edited pretty early in my career. The director is Jim Fall. One of the producers is Ross Katz, who I worked with many times after that, including on the Laramie project. Like I felt like there was a queer connection that brought me in early on. It was very, very helpful because I didn't feel like I had to go too far out of myself to understand the material. But not only that, I mean, I feel like every movie is a challenge because every movie should be a unique, you know, genre is one thing, style is another thing. Every director brings a different style. And then there's like content, and there's like, you know, like basic things like, you know, gay characters or not gay characters. That's sort of the least important thing. But it was a way for me to sort of build an artistic community of people who trusted me and who I felt like were not only my collaborators, but my friends, you know. And John Cameron Mitchell and Howard Gertler are two other people who I've worked with a lot, who were friends of mine, but also became collaborators on several movies. And, you know, it was really about like, what is the, you know, I came out of an artistic scene in a sense, like which is called the queer new wave. I was a little bit behind it in terms of age, but I felt very attracted to the movies they were making, which are the movies that a lot of the movies Christine Vachon produced. Christine Vachon, the producer, whose company is Killer Films, with Pam Koffler. And I felt like, you know, that milieu was where I felt at home. And it really, it was part of a sense of like, you know, you have to have a lot of chutzpah to work in film. You have to say, yeah, I can do this, even though you've never done it before. Or you know, I like really like you have to take some risks about what you're capable of doing. Like every movie, like even on Spider-Woman, you know, which is a musical. I had cut a lot of musical numbers before, but I never that many, and never on that scale. So like when you enter a project, there's always going to be a learning curve, and you have to have a lot of kind of chutzpah about what you think you can do. And being in an artistic community that nurtures you is the way you can do it. I mean, unless you love like being like, I can do it by myself, but I don't feel that way. I can do it because I have collaborators who trust me and who I trust. You know, a lot of times it's my assistant editors, and a lot of times it's my directors. It's both. It's the whole community, really.
Okay, great. So we're gonna take a break, and we're gonna play a game, this or that, and it's a rapid fire game for the audience to get to know you. So are you ready, Brian?
I don't know. Am I ready?
So if the answer, it's a rapid fire game. So if there's something you can't choose, you can say both, right? So this or that So let's try it out. So feature film edit room or streaming series edit room.
Feature.
Comedy timing or dramatic tension.
Dramatic tension.
Working with a director in the room or sending cuts remotely.
Room.
Cutting a music sequence or a fight scene.
Oh, music.
Linear storytelling or non-linear structure.
Non-linear.
First cut fast or first cut perfect.
Oh God, both.
It's a both.
Fast.
Fast. Avid Media Composer or Premiere Pro.
Avid. Yeah. Avid.
Daytime editing or late night creative flow.
Day.
And festival premiere or streaming release day.
Festival.
Okay, we're gonna move on to our next segment, crafting emotion and recent work. You've won 2 primetime Emmys, one for Taking Chance, another for the marvelous Miss Maisel. I love this show. What did those experiences teach you about balancing technical precision with emotional storytelling?
Well, they can't be more different. Taking Chance is a very somber drama, practically an experimental film, which is about taking a deceased Marine's body back to his family, and the very codified process of how another Marine accompanies the body. And that was Kevin Bacon is in that, and it was directed by Ross Katz, who I mentioned earlier. I came in as the second editor. The first editor is Lee Percy, who did a marvelous job, and I just helped with some creative work as well. So we collaborated. For me, that was, winning an Emmy on that was a surprise. It was kind of sensational. I didn't really know how passionate people were about that film until it came out. A lot of not having very few connections to the armed services myself. I really underestimated the amount of passion and feeling of connection that a lot of Americans have when there is a story about a fallen soldier or a fallen Marine. And I feel like I don't know, the award seasons are a lot of things. So there's a lot of superficiality, but there's also a lot of emotional, like people telling you things that are very emotional. And that's, I learned from that experience how passionate people were about seeing their stories on screen, especially this entire large community of Americans who I had no prior connection to in any intimate way. So it was a little bit going outside of my comfort zone, and it was learning about America. So I feel very grateful that happened, and Lee, as I said, did beautiful work on it. And Mrs. Maisel is kind of the opposite. When I read that script, I felt like the world of Borscht Belt Jewish comedians in the early 60s was kind of adjacent to my life in a way. Not that I'm a comedian or a woman or in the Borscht Belt, but as an American Jew from the suburbs, it felt super close to me, and I loved the rhythm of it, and I just like the words crackled on the page, to use probably a cliche, but I remember reading that script thinking, man, that script that worked. Everything about it worked. The dialogue worked, the pacing worked, the energy worked, the characters worked. It had a beginning, middle, and an end. It really went somewhere. I'm like, how did Amy Sherman Palladino, the writer and the director, pack all of that stuff into less than an hour of TV? And then I just didn't want to fuck it up. Like I worked really hard on it, but it was super fast, as every TV pilot is. You shoot really quickly, you cut really quickly, and it just worked. Like Rachel Brosnahan was, an instant star in the footage, and I just tried to honor the rhythm that I was getting and make it as fast as humanly possible in terms of like no air at all between lines and if there
Yeah.
was, take it out. I wanted it to be breathless, which is what the job was. Like Amy told me
Yeah.
when she helped me that she wanted it to have a breathless pace, and I was like, that's great. Like that's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
actually better than it sounds. There are pauses everywhere you look. You don't notice them, but if you really, really look for them, they're everywhere. And the difference between something that that's a little bit a little fat and something that is not is it takes time to build
Yeah.
something. So yeah, it was a fun challenge, but it was great. It's really great.
How long did it take you to edit Marvel's Miss Maisel, the pilot?
The whole job was like 6 weeks, 7 weeks, maybe.
Okay.
Probably
Okay.
maybe six. I think six. And that was again just the pilot episode one.
So let's talk about All the Beauty and the Bloodshed, an incredible documentary that resonated around the world. How did you find the emotional heartbeat of that film in the edit room?
Well, first of all, I want to credit Joe Beanie and Amy Foote, who were the main editors on that. I worked on it for nearly a year, I think, in 2020, which is like literally I started a month before the COVID pandemic began. We moved home. We kept going. It was an incredibly strange thing to be working on a film about several other the AIDS, both the AIDS HIV pandemic and about the overdose epidemic in the US, which are both historical moments that were aggravated by government negligence, let's say. And as COVID was happening, looking at that footage, telling those stories felt like I was in a hall of mirrors where I couldn't separate current reality from history. And that was actually really good, because I felt like the work was urgent. And I would turn on my Avid every morning in whatever home office I was in during those months, and feel like Laura Poitras was telling something that was making history present, contemporary. It really meant a lot to me. But I was the first editor, and I really just put a bunch of scenes together to figure out what was viable to be the spine of some of those storylines. And Joe and Amy really figured out how to structure it and turn it into a narrative. So again, they worked quite a long time after I finished. So it was the definition of a collaboration. And on documentaries, that happens a lot because they go on so long, and often editors don't do the entire thing. Sometimes they do, but often on multi-year projects, they don't. So I was lucky to be on it at the beginning, but I really credit them for finding that movie.
I had a cinematographer on my show, and she mentioned to me that when shooting a nonfiction is totally different than fiction. When she shoots a nonfiction, she listens more. It's more sound than visual for some reason. I'm not sure what she meant by that. But
Fiction.
In editing, is it the same? Yeah, nonfiction. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's more about the story than the visual, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, it's interesting because I think on the great documentaries, it's kind of the same as fiction. I mean, I think the great documentaries really use the camera to not just create exposition and tell you where you are, but show you how to feel about where you are and who you're looking at. And I've worked with the greatest documentary cinematographers like Kirsten Johnson, who shot a film about Oscar Michaud that I worked on for a year, called Oscar's Comeback. And with great nonfiction cinematographers, and Kirsten is an incredible director as well, lately more so. And like you really feel that they're getting underneath this the subject, and even when it's a talking head, that talking head is in a space, and that space is alive, and the way that they frame the character in environments creates a sense of meaning. So I mean, I'm being a little vague, but like I just think that with great
Yeah.
nonfiction photography, you're doing all the things that fiction will do, and
Oh,
and that goes all the way down to music and sound design and everything else. And I think Laura Poitras is one of the best examples of this. Like her films are cinema.
yeah.
They're even when they're primarily made up of, talking heads. They The way that those faces
Yeah.
and like interact in their environments with one another,
Yeah.
the camera sometimes with a disembodied voice, like they're you feel it's all full of story. It's never just plot.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay, so Fire Island brought a completely different tone, bright, fast-paced, modern, romantic comedy energy. How did you approach pacing and humor in that project compared to heavier dramas or documentaries?
I think the poster is right there. The legs of Fire Island are in my kitchen at all times. I the way I approached Fire Island was as in my first discussions with Andrew on the director when he interviewed me were about how even though the script primarily seems to function on the level of like a kind of slapstick humor and like comedy, like all like kind of the fun stuff of comedy and the physical humor and the fish out of water stuff and like all sorts of like like candy in a sense, that there would also be this other this undertone of real romantic longing and the risks of
Yeah,
when you fall there. When you fall in love with, it's risky. Your intimacy is challenging, and Joel wrote he wrote that is in the script as well, but it's sort of subtext, it's sort of underneath everything. So Andrew really wanted to bring that out, and if you look at Andrew's previous two films, I mean, they're extremely soulful and meditative, also really fun and sexy and stuff. But like Fire Island, even though it was sort of a broad comedy relative to Andrew's previous two films, I
mhm,
think it was important to still have that sense of stakes and drama. And that meant it would have to be soulful at times, and it would have to feel like the environment of that island, as like goofy and sexy and stupid as it is a lot of the time, it's also really beautiful.
mhm.
So it meant that it would have to be shot with extreme care, and our DP Fetty, like, it has shot it really beautifully, and like that it's feels like a magical space, but it also is a very natural space. And like a lot of like movies about, like gay movies don't really have a sense of nature and a sense of the environment, and so there
Yeah,
was a whole lot of stuff to draw on that was more than just the romantic comedy trope
yeah,
stuff. Um and also Jane Austen, and that's in the script. I mean, that's what Joel was creating, his own Jane
mhm,
Austen. So we had a very good pedigree, to use
yeah.
a Jane Austen-y kind of term.
That's amazing. So your work on SaintX 2023 dives into mystery and multiple timelines. What's the
Yeah.
secret to keeping tension alive when jumping between perspectives and time periods?
How do you keep tension alive when jumping between perspectives and time period? That's a really good question for a lot of episodic TV editing, because a lot of times you are jumping between storylines.
Yeah,
And I think the challenge is that if you jump too often, you make the audience kind of not invest in anything, and if you stay on something too long, then you sort of neglect
you lose
the
that.
other
Yeah,
storylines. So it's really about balance, and and the script does provide the template for what that balance is. I mean, usually, I mean, on Saint X, um, the script definitely was a beautiful version of how to navigate these interlocking storylines, which comes from the novel. No, we altered it in the editing for sure. And again, it was about it's about emphasis, and it's about needing to be in the point of view that feels the most. You kind of you're always asking yourself, what does the audience need to see now? And often it's not what they think that they want to see, but what they need to see. So I wish I could give you a good example, but I feel like
this is good.
you have to guide people, but if you guide them to the thing that's really obvious, it'll feel obvious. And if you guide them to something that is less obvious, but they need, then it'll feel great. And you create the sense of need by setting things up early on and then off. This like
tease
good
them.
Tease them, or you create questions that have to be answered. And a lot of times when you're cutting a scene, like the script will answer a question at the end of the scene, and a lot of what we do as editors is cut off the answer because we realize that the answer is actually going to be answered better in a different scene, but not in that scene. And if you don't answer it, I guess being vague again a little bit, but it's like sometimes
good.
Scene that will explain where you're going or what, even an implication. And often you're just cutting all that shit out because you want to move into the next scene or sequence feeling that hovering sense of something being unresolved. That when you get to the next scene, in the audience is thinking, not really thinking, but emotionally needing something to get answered. And that's why it can be very satisfying to get to the end of a movie and suddenly something is answered that you didn't even know you were asking to be answered.
That's great. So, and it's never over. Jeff Buckley, 2025. Music clearly plays a huge role. How does editing musical or performance-driven sequences differ from narrative drama?
Editing musical sequences versus drama. I mean, I want to say they're the same, but I know that's sort of not really true. I mean, they're the same in terms of it's all storytelling, and it's all flow, and it's all about the things I was talking about, like paying off things that were set up, not answering questions until the right time, not introducing too many characters so that you can't follow. It's all the same. But with music, what I loved about editing It's Never Over is that Jeff Buckley's songs weren't just the background music; they were the story. So, the title song, the song is Lover, but the song that the title comes from is really Jeff's breakup song with Rebecca Moore, his first girlfriend in the film. And the lyrics tell the story of that breakup, and they did it at the time, and they do it in the film. But the way that we tried to use that song was that Jeff would only need to say so much about that relationship, and Rebecca would only need to say so much, and the song would tell you the rest. And sometimes the song tells you in terms of lyrics, and sometimes the song tells you in terms of the way the music makes you feel, independent of the lyrics. So as an editor, I was trying to channel Jeff, not to sound like totally pretentious, but I was really trying to channel Jeff so that I understood where he was emotionally in that moment in his life, and try to emote the way that he might have emoted writing. I mean, it sounds a little too grandiose, but I really felt like it was a big responsibility to tell, essentially to be his biographer. It's a big responsibility. I didn't know enough about this guy to be his biographer, so I had to trust the skills that I had as an editor to be that bridge, and that those skills were really actively listening to the music and having an emotional reaction and figuring out where those pieces fit in his life story, obviously with the director, with Amy Berg, who had a very good idea of how different songs would be good, like surrogates or examples of where he was in his life. But yeah, and Stacy did a ton of that as well. Stacy Goldade, who edited with me.
Yeah.
And also bringing our life experiences to it. I mean, as I said, like I had my when I started out in the industry, I lived in the East Village. Jeff performed at Chenet, which was a block away from my apartment. So I knew the milieu that he came up in. And Stacy spent a lot of time in Memphis, Tennessee, which is where Jeff spent the end of his life.
Yeah.
So between the two of us, we were bringing, I mean, this is not like you have to, but we brought our lived experience to that biography and channeled him through our own memories of the places that he played in and lived in and loved in and all the stuff. So like it felt, the personal connection made it feel like we were authorized to be his biographers, even though neither have degrees in history or musicology, but like we have degrees in editing. So it was about being present to the story, to his art form, to Jeff's art.
You're also editing Kiss of the Spider-Woman 2025, a highly stylized performance-heavy piece. What's unique about editing something with theatrical DNA and big visuals language?
Oh, wow. So you're asking about Kiss of the Spider-Woman's theatrical DNA. Well, I mean, it was amazing because I'm a show tunes queen who never got to edit a movie musical before. So it was I mean, I'm not exaggerating to say it was a dream come true. I love the fact that that Bill Condon's screenplay essentially it wasn't adapted from the previous film, the Hector Barbenco film. It was adapted from the novel in 1976, the book of the musical by Terrence McNally in 1994, but also a previous version of the musical that Terrence McNally wrote that was a workshop production from 1990. And the reason that Bill incorporated some of that version was that in that version, the movie that Molina is describing to Valentine in the prison is one movie with a beginning, middle, and end. And in the Broadway show, that idea was sort of altered to make it sort of an impression of several shows that Aurora, the character that Chita Rivera plays, was in. So it's more impressionistic, and it has more different genres of Hollywood movies. But the idea that we could make one narrative where Tonatiuh would play both Molina and Kendall Nesbitt, and Diego Luna would play both Valentine and Armando, and J-Lo would play Ingrid Luna and the Spider-Woman and Aurora. Like the idea that you could do that mirroring and keep it consistent throughout the entire film, and that the story beats of one could mirror the other, that comes from the workshop production, but heavily adapted by Bill and integrated with the novel and his own fascinations and interests. And like when I read that script, I'm like, whoa, like the DNA of Broadway is all over this, but it also it's a movie about movies. So should be a movie. I mean, it's a movie. It's about the golden age of Hollywood, and we get to show that by doing an homage. I was going to say imitation, but it's not. It's an homage to movies of the golden age of musicals of the golden age of Hollywood. So it has both Broadway DNA, but it also has Hollywood DNA, and it also has the DNA of this like incredibly prescient novel about queer love that takes place during the junta, the military regime in Argentina in the 70s and 80s, and feels very relevant.
Yeah.
So both for its queer and trans or proto-trans issues, and also for its for what it has to say about repression, political repression, and resistance, and joy in the time of political repression. So it just felt like it was sort of firing on all cylinders. And when I read it, I'm like, whoa, this is it's a lot. It's a lot. It's both a challenge and a great pleasure to be in the sandbox of all of those ideas that Bill was interested in. It was incredible.
That's amazing. So when you're handed dailies for such different genres, from documentaries to TV dramas to rom-coms, how do you find your starting point in the footage?
How do I find my starting point in the footage? I don't think that genre is. I think genre is sort of irrelevant to that. I think that I mean, the way that I edit is relatively consistent. I look at the footage for the day, and on a documentary, that could be an arbitrarily set amount of footage that is archival or was shot, but is just a small piece of what exists. And on a feature film, you're trying to keep up with camera, so you're cutting what they shot the day before almost consistently. So you look at what you have, and I watch it and I make selects, which I think is what most editors do. You watch it and you some editors put the select on top, or move it up to a higher track, or double it on a higher track, or just cut it into a new sequence. But you're basically it basically feels like a process of reduction, so that the only things you have left are the things that speak to you. But it's risky, because if you remove too much or don't remember all the things that you didn't choose, then you're boxing yourself in. So it's a really interesting conundrum where you're if you don't start reducing, then you have nowhere to go, and if you reduce too much, then you don't have enough to build with. But luckily it's all digital, so it's it's not it's not hard anymore. Like it's all just sitting there for you. But no, you start with, maybe if they shot 3 hours on Tuesday and it's Wednesday, I'll go in, and hopefully if I go in at 9:30, by hopefully before lunch, but maybe after lunch, I've looked at everything, I've selected everything, I've reduced the 3 hours to maybe half an hour, maybe 45 minutes. And then, so I have select, then I have super selects, then I have super selects of super selects. And eventually I only have maybe 2 or 3 of every moment. And, it's a puzzle. Like, some performances don't go with other performances, and some performances do. And some line readings are amazing, but they're not relevant to what I've built prior to that. And again, and it's not really just my preferences ever. It's how am I channeling the director's sensibility and style from everything that I know about the director? Like, what did she tell me about the scene? What did she tell me about the movie in general, and the goals? I mean, the vision. Some of those things are very general, and some of those things are really specific. Sometimes, like when I got the footage for the last scene of Kiss of the Spider Woman, which is after a big musical number that's almost like a grand opera. The coda is the, sorry, spoilers, but the coda is like the day after the junta was abolished, and the prisons are opened, and the prisoners are walking out into the sunlight. And in my mind, when I read that in the script, I thought that would be a single shot attached to the end of the musical number. I thought it would like da 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 da, and we made it my love, which is the last line of the movie, as if it were the last line of the song. But then Bill called me up. He had shot it the day before. I was going into work. I just got off my bike. He called me and he said, the way that I envisioned the end is that we return to the style of the beginning of the movie, where there's no music. We're stripped down. It's just people's voices and soundscapes and wind and prison sounds, and we're outside, and we're back into sort of neo-realism. We're back at,
Yeah.
or documentary realism, and we linger for a little bit. It's not just a little beat. It's you feel it. It's as if everything that happened was a dream, and now the whole movie is bookended by this reality. But then the great moment is that Diego's character Valentin is holding Molina's red scarf, and he holds it up, and it's as if like the world of the movies becomes this totem for, literally Marxism, but not literally, just their love, passion, drag, all of these things, that color introduced into this beige place. It's this just beautiful image of like what's left behind is Molina's sacrifice, which is not just his death, but his love. He gave Valentin something to live for.
Yeah,
So just
that's
anyway,
amazing.
but the way that Bill described it was as like, he's like, no, we're back in like a 70s, a 70s neo-realist kind of movie, and it's all very stark, and the music is over, and I didn't read it that way, so I needed to understand the vision by just communicating it with him. He needed to tell me, and I needed to look at the footage knowing that's what I was cutting toward.
That's amazing. So we're going to take a final break, and we're going to play a game, True or False. And it's time to test some facts about your life and career. Are you ready, Brian?
Sure.
True or false, you can tell if a scene will work within the first 10 seconds of watching the dailies.
False.
True or false, winning your first Emmy actually made you more nervous about what to edit next.
True. True.
True or false, you prefer to build the rhythm of a scene before touching sound design.
False. Weirdly false. False. Yeah.
False. True or
Yeah.
false, editing documentaries is harder than editing fiction.
True.
True or false, you still sketch or take notes by hand before starting a cut.
Depends. True. Sometimes.
True or false, an editor's intuition is more important than any software skill.
True.
True or false, the marvelous Miss Maisel had the fastest cutting pace you've ever worked on.
No, I want to say false.
False.
Because
True or false? Yeah.
Because
No,
it was
perfect.
very linear. So I think
Yeah.
when you're talking about fast, you're talking about like compression and like what like not like
Right.
jumping through time. I think is a different kind of speed. Anyway, I'm being a little too literal with the question, but it's a true false. It's a true false answer. So apologies.
And finally, true or false, every great edit starts with listening rather than cutting.
Oh, true.
And our final segment, vision and legacy. With the editing technology evolving so fast, AI tools, remote workflows, virtual production, how do you stay true to storytelling while embracing innovation?
No, it's such a good question. How will AI and innovation affect, or how will I stay true to storytelling when AI is part of the
Yeah.
process? I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I feel like
I don't know.
editing is entirely about subtext, and I feel like AI is entirely not about subtext. So
Yes.
I think that AI might be able to approximate subtext simply because movies rely on it to tell stories, and if they're data mining movies for cutting rhythms, they might imitate subtext without knowing that that's what's happening because they don't have a brain. But
Yeah.
I'm not. So I think that AI might create art that is really interesting, and we should be open to. I should be open to it. I want to be open to it, but I haven't yet seen something that seems to. And granted, I have not seen a ton of AI moving images. I've seen a lot of images. It seems like it's going to be hard to replicate subtext, because you literally have nothing to point to. You have nothing to collect. You can't label the thing that you're collecting because it doesn't exist. It exists in it exists in your mind. Like it's nothing that characters are saying or doing. It's the accumulation of stuff that you already know about them that they aren't saying. So since that's like the most interesting thing about film in a way, I don't know how it can do it well, but it can do other things. It can create landscapes and sets, and it can put characters places, and these are very basic things it's been doing for a while already. Like, but I also hope it helps with things like media management and organization, and I think that I think the job of an assistant editor, and I have amazing ones, Matthew Buckley being my major partner and associate editor and assistant editor. Like, I feel like he's a creative, and he spends so much time organizing stuff. And that an organization, I mean, is sort of like the springboard for everything working. But like, I feel like I want him to be able to like work on visual effects or work on doing alternate versions of scenes so that my eyes are fresh, so that I can look at something and have a reaction that isn't mediated by like everything I know about this. Like, there's so much that assistant editors can do that it doesn't seem like AI is being programmed to really remove the workload that needs to be removed. It's doing something else. It's spending time doing something that we actually don't need, when there are tons of things that we do need that it could do. It could do string outs, and maybe it does. Maybe Premiere does that already. But like, I feel like, I have a list of things that I would love AI to do. I don't know if it does.
That's amazing.
Probably does.
So, what advice would you give to aspiring editors or film students who want to develop their own signature style rather than just follow trends?
I mean, what advice would I give someone starting out in editing? I think it's important to actually be a person who consumes art that isn't only movies. I think that I don't know if it was Kurosawa or something. I don't know. It's going to sound pretentious, but some famous director said, film is unique because it's all the art forms combined. Maybe it was Kurosawa who said that. And it's true. Like, it's painting, it's design, it's graphics, it's color theory, it's blocking and dance, and well, sometimes it's dance, and it's it's composition and blah blah blah, lighting and photography, and obviously words and text and theater, and so like I feel, and music. So I feel like to really have passion about editing, you have to have passion about those things too, and that probably means that you have passion about those art forms, not just in film, but theater and opera and books and history and stuff. And like, when you do a project, you are required to do a deep dive into the thing that the movie is about, and that's one of the greatest. You go on a little journey every time you do a movie or TV show, and I feel like it's so much more nutritious or fun or whatever, or both, if you're already kind of into that stuff. If it's a historical piece, to have some knowledge of the period you're talking about, if it's, we're constantly putting in music and interfacing with composers, and like the great editors who I admire really know music, different styles of music and different eras of music, and like, because those rhythms are like, they influence the way that you think about rhythm. So basically all the other disciplines are like super important to just keep you like fresh and just excited about going in every day. You have to be eager, because the work is long and hard, and like, you want to go in feeling like you're getting something in return, besides like employment. You're getting like enrichment, to use you're getting enrichment.
That's amazing. And finally, looking ahead, what kind of project would excite you the most? Something completely new, maybe a new genre you haven't touched yet?
What would make me excited? something new, a new genre.
Or is there like a
I
dream project you haven't done yet you'd like to do?
I've never done something that's silent. Like all of this
Oh,
talk of dialogue makes me. I mean, I've never really thought about this until you asked me this question. It would be so interesting to just to live in a world without dialogue, especially because, as I said, exposition can be so annoying. You're constantly editors are constantly just trying to pretend that we're not doing exposition, that we're camouflaging it. It would be so much fun and hard to have to do that without words. So yeah, yeah. If you have any scripts that have no words, send them.
send them your way.
I don't know if I believe in that, but yeah, no, it'd be like I mean, I think it would be nice to just like get
Yeah.
out of that comfort zone of, people talking or what motivates what's going on. It's not true. People talk because humans communicate that way, but not because it's the best way to tell a story.
Yeah. That's amazing. So, Brian, we're nearing the end of the show. That's all, folks. Thank you for watching. Brian A. Cates, everyone. Thank you, Brian.
What a joy. Thank
Thank
you.
you so
Those are
much.